Staying alive is obviously the #1 aspect of a BR like Apex, but it's something that everybody struggles with. What's up guys, it's Valued, and today we're gonna dive into the best advice I can give you guys for staying alive longer. From playing your life in a fight and clutching up, to planning out your fights better to make sure you come away with the win, and everything in between. We have a lot to cover today guys, so let's get right into it. The best place to start is understanding exactly when you're in danger of taking damage. And at the core of this is understanding lines of sight. This is a concept most players think they have down, but trust me, everybody needs to work on this. All of us can see an enemy and understand that they have the ability to shoot us. What we're actually talking about here is the unconscious understanding of where you are on the map and how many potential open angles you're exposed to. From rotating across the map to taking a fight inside of a POI, you need to be constantly aware of potentially dangerous angles. If you're out of combat but getting lax about your positioning, we all know how fast you can actually go down if somebody gets free shots on you. Make sure you're hugging cover, moving quickly across open areas, and constantly scanning for potential enemies lying in wait. This can keep you from taking free damage, and avoiding this is really important. While you may have the meds to just heal back up, this takes precious time and uses up your heals, which you're gonna need in upcoming fights. Not to mention, taking this free damage completely stalls your pressure while you heal back up. Depending on how close these enemies that surprise you are, getting cracked and having to heal up can often mean your teammates fighting in an uneven fight for a few seconds while you heal. So don't get lazy with your awareness just because you aren't in a fight, because as we all know, things can escalate in Apex very quickly. And when you are in a fight, these lines of sight become even more important to staying alive. Constantly being on the move is a great way to win uneven fights, but you're not going to pull this off without constant understanding of enemies' lines of sight and using them to your advantage. Knowing what angles are being watched or what angles you can peek quickly to get damage without putting yourself in danger is one of the biggest aspects of fighting in Apex. We all do this subconsciously a bit, but we really need to make sure we have a deep understanding of how these angles develop in a fight and how to use them to win. This goes for your teammates' line of sight as well. Knowing what angles they have to deal damage, as well as understanding where they took damage from based on their position, will help you to work with your team more effectively, but also use that info to keep you alive. And guys, no matter what aspect of your game you're struggling with, whether it's staying alive, winning fights, or rotations, the amazing coaches over at ProGuides.com are here to help. These are some of the best players in the world, specifically trained to help you diagnose your weaknesses in-game and instantly turn them into strengths. If you want to see improvement today, make sure to check out the top link in the description below. One of the biggest ways these lines of sight that we just talked about can be abused is to kite out enemies in a fight. Maybe you're low on health in a fight, or your teammates go down and you're trying to 1v2. This is where kiting out your enemies and looking for openings becomes really strong. Rather than just looking to challenge someone and get it down, your squad tries to play out the situation until an opening presents itself. So many players will just take a gunfight when they're down in numbers. Even if you manage to get a knock, you take too much damage and you're likely going to go down to the next enemy. Instead, you should look to kite these enemies out, abusing lines of sight, and waiting until you can catch one player in a sprint or off guard in any way. You see a lot of your favorite streamers abusing this tactic to win uneven fights, and I do it every day. While we may use a ton of movement to pull this off, you can do it with very limited advanced movement if you're just smart about your pathing and use the lines of sight. This is a really tough tactic to get down, but if you can, you will be so hard to kill in 1v1s, and you'll have a much higher success rate clutching up for your team. Now, while you can pull off all this kiting and line of sight abuse without any advanced movement, having this movement up your sleeve to use in those key situations is really gonna help you increase your success rate. Effectively slide challenging an enemy, wall bouncing or b-hopping to cover, or hitting a tab strafe to hit a big PK shot, these movement options just open up your options and allow you to be more creative with your plays. All the advanced movement tech can make you just a bit faster, surprise your enemy more, and let you navigate situations so effectively. This goes for out of combat movement as well. Using inclines to your advantage for slide jumps or even just weaving in and out of cover effectively will help you stay alive, even if you don't think you're in danger. If you guys feel like you're a bit newer to the concepts we're talking about today, then focus on the core of understanding lines of sight, kiting enemies out, and the rest of the tips we're going to talk about today. But if you're feeling comfortable applying these ideas to your game, then you really should make sure you have a couple advanced movement techniques down so you can use them whenever you need them. Because trust me guys, that situation will arise. One big aspect of staying alive that many players overlook is planning their positioning. As I've talked about a lot on this channel, it's a great idea to plan your map position ahead of time. But when was the last time you genuinely had a positioning plan in a fight? The same way you want to plan out your map movement and your rotations, you also need to plan your in-fight positioning based on friendly and enemy positions. Before you ever get into one of these kiting situations that I just touched on, you should be planning how you're going to attack and updating your plan as the fight develops. Maybe you take a nearby building to get height instead of pushing an enemy building. Or you plan out where enemies are going to need to go and position around that instead of their current position. These are a few examples of in-fight positioning tips that can give you an edge over every opponent and keep you from needlessly dying. Take in all the info around you and try to come up with a game plan before you just go and take a fight. All too often, players decide they need to fight an enemy team and just die trying to force the situation. It might be a great play to fight that team, but you need to make sure you're approaching it in a smart way and not forcing your squad into a tough situation. These types of thoughts should be going through your head and communicated to your squad before you ever commit to a fight. And if you make a plan but it starts to go poorly, don't be afraid to update that plan on the fly. In Apex, the goal should be to only take fights that you have an advantage on, but let's be real, that's not always going to be the case. But that doesn't mean you have to die for a bad situation. Analyze the situation, opt out of bad fights, and look to position yourself advantageously instead of responding to enemy pressure. This type of in-fight thought process will keep you alive, but only if you stay calm and keep a clear head. You can't panic when a fight's going bad or a team pushes you. The game isn't over until the game is over, and until then, you should be staying calm and looking to clutch up or just play patiently. A lot of players assume fights are over long before they actually are. Think about how many times you've made a bad play or a silly challenge because you thought the game was over. Well, those enemies are very likely to do the same thing. Staying dialed in until the very last moment is some of the best advice I can give. I can't tell you guys how many times I've won a fight or escaped with just a sliver of health to heal back up and keep my squad in the game. Players will all too often take the approach of, well, I'm just going to try to get a kill on my way out and die. But you shouldn't do this. Not only does this completely eliminate the possibility of a clutch in a lot of situations, it also stunts your growth as a player. These close fights or bad situations are where you get to test your skill and really see what you're made of. All that practice time you have in-game will pay off if you give it the opportunity to. So guys, if you're more conscious of playing your life and all the things that can jeopardize it in a game of Apex, you're just gonna stay alive longer. If you put a focus on it, you will improve if you have the right mindset. And I know you all have what it takes no matter where you are or how good you think you are. I want to see you guys winning more games and clutching up to have your squad mates praising you, so take these tips and apply them to your game. Anyway guys, there's obviously more tips for staying alive, so if you have any, make sure to drop them in the comments below. And as always, it's been your boy Valued, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.